death, mystery, and the world's most infamous haunted doll. Just weeks ago, respected paranormal investigator Dan Rivera died suddenly after showcasing Annabelle on tour. Almost immediately, whispers spread online that the cursed doll had escaped, that she had vanished from her case, that something darker than coincidence had struck again. Tonight we separate rumor from reality, fear from fact, and look at the chilling truth that still surrounds Annabelle. A doll said to be possessed not by a ghost, but by something much worse. This isn't Hollywood. This isn't just a movie franchise. This is the story of a real doll and a very real death. Welcome to Truth That Haunts. Before we dive in, I want to hear from you. Have you ever seen or felt something you can't explain? A shadow moving when no one's there. A voice whispering your name in an empty room. Or maybe an object that seemed to shift on its own. Drop your story in the comments. You never know. Your experience might be featured in a future episode. On July 13th, 2025, in the historic town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, a place already soaked in tragedy and restless spirits, death came for one of the paranormal community, Zone. Dan Rivera wasn't a rookie thrill-seeker. He wasn't some tourist chasing ghost stories for clout. Rivera was respected, a dedicated paranormal investigator, educator, and tour leader. He had worked closely with the New England Society for Psychic Research, the very group founded by the Warrens themselves. In early July, Rivera joined a traveling showcase of the supernatural called Devils on the Run. Think of it as a roadshow of haunted artifacts and chilling tales, moving from city to city. But this wasn't just any tour stop. This time, the headliner was Annabelle, the real doll, on display for crowds hungry for a brush with the infamous legend. At the Gettysburg event, Rivera stood near Annabelle's case. He spoke calmly, professionally, explaining the warnings that always came with her. Do not taunt, do not touch, do not challenge. To mock Annabelle, he explained, was to invite danger. Clips of the event surfaced on TikTok within hours. One video in particular, a slow pan across Annabelle's case, her stitched smile unchanging, her glassy eyes reflecting the crowd, exploded with over 3.4 million views. Comments filled with everything from jokes to terror. Nope, not watching this at night. Her eyes followed me. I swear, why would you bring that thing out of the museum? The fascination was real, and so was the fear. But that night, fear turned into tragedy. After the show, Rivera retired to his hotel room. Hours later, staff discovered him unresponsive. Emergency services confirmed what friends and colleagues could hardly believe. Dan Rivera was dead. The cause? Cardiac arrest. Sudden, unexplained, he was only in his 40s. Healthy, no prior warnings, just gone. And then came the detail that turned a personal tragedy into a global headline. When authorities entered the room, Annabelle was nowhere to be seen. Almost instantly, social media exploded. Annabelle escaped, she claimed another life. The curse strikes again. Hashtag spread. Videos dissected the timeline. Threads lit up with speculation. For believers, this was confirmation of what they'd always feared. For skeptics, it was a cruel coincidence wrapped in myth. But for millions watching from their phones, the only thought that lingered was, if Annabelle was missing, where was she now? Do you believe Rivera's death was pure coincidence? Or was he truly cursed after bringing Annabelle to Gettysburg? Let me know in the comments below. To understand why an empty pedestal can set the world on fire, you have to see the story people believe sits on that pedestal. Annabelle wasn't born of porcelain and crackled glaze. She wasn't sculpted for horror. She began as Raggedy Ann. Soft cloth body, yarn hair, a stitched smile stitched to every other Raggedy Ann ever made. The 1970s origin people repeat goes like this. A young nursing student named Donna receives. The doll is a gift from her mother, innocent, nostalgic. She props Annabelle on the bed of a small apartment she shares with her roommate Angie. Life continues, until life doesn't. At first it's small, Annabelle's head angled differently than Donna remembered. Arms turned, legs folded. A shift in posture is easy to misremember. Until the room changes too. The doll appears outside the bedroom. On the living room floor, kneeling by the front door, Donna and Angie laugh it off the way you laugh off a cold spot or a flickering bulb. It's a story you tell yourself. We're just tired, while another story scratches just beneath it. Then the notes begin. Short paper fragments. Childlike scrawl. Help me. Help us. Debt. People will debate forever whether those notes existed, who wrote them, and why. But in the narrative that took root, the messages mark the point where harmless weirdness tilts into fear. The escalation arrives as a person. Lou, a friend who already calls the doll bad news, stays over and wakes to find Annabelle perched on his chest. He can't move. He can't breathe. When he finally can, he discovers scratches across his torso that weren't there before. Some stories say the cuts fade in days. None say the unease ever does. The roommates bring in a psychic medium who introduces a name, Annabelle Higgins, and a pathos. A lonely child spirit who latched onto the doll and only wants acceptance. The roommates, compassionate, invite the presence to stay. If you accept the Warrens' cosmology, that's the fatal error. An invitation, kind of spiritual open door. Enter Ed and Lorraine Warren. Names that are themselves a litmus test for belief versus skepticism. Their assessment wasn't a crying child spirit. It was a non-human entity manipulating the household through deception in order to possess. Their solution: remove the doll, contain it, and seal the access point. Annabelle would spend the next decades in a locked case at the Warrens Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut, emblazoned with one warning: positively do not open. The museum closed to the public in 2019. The doll remained in the NSBR orbit, occasionally displayed at controlled events. The legend metastasized as legends do. Through testimony, visitors who mocked the doll and crashed on the ride home, people who touched the glass and later swore their luck flipped like a coin, a biker who pounded the case, laughed, and didn't make it past the curve. Skeptics demand paperwork. Believers say the paperwork is out there if you want it. But the key is not ironclad proof. The key is that Annabelle works like a mirror. She reflects what you bring to her. Doubt becomes daring. Fear becomes reverence. And once a story is strong enough, it doesn't matter whether every detail is documented. What matters is that people act like it is. By the time Hollywood arrived, the Conjuring films and the Annabelle spin-offs, the doll was in just a case study. She was an icon. Ironically, the movie version made her more menacing than the real one. Glassy-eyed porcelain, cracked and cruel. The real Annabelle stayed the same soft-bodied doll she'd always been. That contrast, innocent object, malignant legacy, is exactly why the public can stop looking. When Dan Rivera died in Gettysburg on July 13th, the public didn't have a cause they trusted yet, but they did have a sequence. Man tours with Annabelle. Man speaks near Annabelle. Man dies. Human brains are storytelling machines, and correlation is rocket fuel. Local and national outlets covered the tragedy with an austere tone, noting Rivera's role with NESPA and his respected standing in the community. But large parts of the internet cultivated a different tone: frenetic, speculative, hungry. Comments beneath the viral TikTok kept climbing. New clips mashed up stills of Rivera with the doll, overlaid with words like curse and consequence. This wasn't a police procedural. It was the crowdsourced that always rises when a famous legend intersects a fresh loss. And then the missing rumor detonated. Posts claimed first responders didn't see Annabelle in the room, implying she'd either been stolen or, far better for the myth, got out. Aggregators and blogs stitched speculation into headlines. A few outlets framed things with cautious language, but caution seldom outruns shock on the internet. Here's the corrective, and it matters. Annabelle was not missing. The NESPR team and Tony Spera, Ed and Lorraine Warren's son-in-law and current caretaker, stated clearly that the original Annabelle remains secured in Connecticut and that the tour doll was never on the loose. NBC Connecticut ran the clarification at the height of rumor season in late 2025, weeks before Gettysburg, when a previous wave of Annabelle escaped claims were already spreading. After Rivera's death, the same point was repeated. Secured, accounted for, not missing. Why does the rumor keep returning? Because it's perfect. It offers the one thing every ghost story craves: movement. A locked case shuts a narrative down. Empty case opens every door. It's the same reason urban legends insist the killer still walks among us. If the danger is still at large, your retell has urgency. You don't just listen, you check the locks. It also helps that the Gettysburg stop was a perfect storm. A famously haunted town. A famously haunted doll. A sold-out schedule over July 11th to 13th. And a TikTok machine that had already delivered millions of views on the doll mere hours before the news of Rivera's passing. In media terms, that's structural Tinder. All it needed was a match. In the days that followed, Scripps and other outlets memorialized Rivera and stressed the lack of foul play. Newsweek reported further coroner context. But the rumor, resilient and adaptable, simply skirted around the updates. It always does. That's what rumors do best, survive. Let's talk about the mechanics. Why does a single claim, Annabelle's missing, catch wildfire now? First, recognition. Annabelle's a household name. You do not have to explain her. She's freighted with meaning before the story even starts. In a feed economy, that's an edge. Second, visuals. The image of an empty case is cinematic shorthand. You don't even need a paragraph. It's one photo, real or not, and your brain supplies the rest. Third, platform cadence. TikTok's tilt towards short, felt truth content rewards charged claims over patient verification. When 3.4 million people are hovering around a single object in their For You pages, a believable rumor has an open runway. Fourth, Gettysburg. Certain places act like amplifiers because we've already agreed they're haunted. A claim made at a mall hits differently than a claim made at a battlefield, asylum, and orphanage. Fifth, fresh grief. Rivera's death was a real human loss. When grief meets myth, people reach for explanations that feel proportional to the pain. It was time rarely satisfies. It was Annabelle is terrible, but it feels like it means something. Finally, precedent. This was not the first Annabelle escaped rumor of 2025. In May, the story flared up strongly enough that NBC Connecticut put out a segment saying, essentially, no, she did not. She's safe in Connecticut. When a rumor has already carved a path, it can sprint the second time. Part of the confusion floating online is the question which Annabelle people are talking about. The original Raggedy Ann doll linked to the Warrens case is the one in NESPR custody, the one long presented in the Monroe Museum case marked positively do not open. That is the artifact with the legendary paper trail and the lore attached to Donna, Angie, and Lou. The tour presents Annabelle under strict protocols, announced and ticketed. Event pages for Gettysburg list photography and video opportunities with the doll and other items, which led to the clips you saw rocketing around TikTok in mid-July. The rumor tends to conflate these. People think the original Lepter Museum case trundled off to a Hampton Inn and vanished. The reality, stated repeatedly by Tony Spera, is that the doll remains secured, and when transported or displayed, it's under extreme precautions. Primetimer S Recap notes, Spera even told the New York Post the rumors were false and were likely stoked by the tour itself. That's not as thrilling as a jailbreak, but it is the truth. What do you think so far? Coincidence with a cruel sense of timing? Or a story that keeps repeating itself because we keep giving it breath? Tell me below. And if you've ever felt a room change when a certain object entered it, cold air, static on your arms, that pressure behind the eyes, describe it. Don't worry if you can't explain it. Here you don't have to. Amid the algorithms and the glass and the hashtags, there is a name the story must not swallow. Dan Rivera. It was not a gimmick. It wasn't just the guy in frame. It was a colleague, a friend, a son, and for many in the paranormal community, a person who bridged skeptical methodology with respect for belief. Newsrooms summarized his death with the restraint obituaries require. The community remembered the quiet stewardship he brought to rooms that could have easily become circus tents. When I say the rumors survived the updates, that's what rumors do, not what they should. The only person who owed anyone a final word was Rivera, and death denies us those answers. So we are left with context. The Gettysburg dates, the sold-out sessions, the viral clip, the caretaker's clarification, the coroner's stance, at a gap where certainty should be. Into that gap, we pour what we already believe. In the second half of this episode, we're going to widen the lens. We'll walk through other cursed objects that left a trail of broken glass and broken lives in their wake, or at least in their legend. We'll weigh skeptic versus believer without sugarcoating either side. And we'll parse the way 2025 keeps rewarding the stories we want over the facts we have, until folklore writes the first draft and journalism tries to keep up. But before we go there, let's pause where Gettysburg leaves us. A quiet hotel room, a phone that will never be answered. A case that was not empty after all, a town that knows the sound of loss. And a doll whose power may not be what's inside her, but what we bring to her. Maybe that's the most terrifying part. If you're still with me, thank you. Episodes like this take time to research, and your likes, comments, and shares keep truth that haunts alive. If you're new here, subscribe. If you're returning, you already know. The deeper we go, the stranger it gets. Up next, the anatomy of a curse. What history's most infamous haunted objects can teach us about Annabelle and about ourselves. Annabelle is not alone in her reputation. History is littered with objects people swear carry death in their shadow. Some are jewels, some are art, some are as ordinary as furniture. All share one thing, a trail of misfortune that turns coincidence into folklore. Take the Hope Diamond, one of the most famous gems in the world. Brilliant blue, now resting in the Smithsonian. But before its museum days, legends said it cursed its owners with madness, betrayal, even beheadings. Marie Antoinette allegedly wore it before the guillotine fell. Later, a socialite who handled the diamond died in a car crash. Historians roll their eyes. Gemologists trace sales receipts, not curses. But the public remembers the bloodlines that ended, not the insurance claims paid. Or the Bassano vase, an Italian artifact said to bring death to anyone who possessed it. Stories claim the vase was rediscovered in the 1980s, auctioned, and every buyer died within months. Eventually, it was supposedly buried in concrete, hidden where no one would risk digging it up again. Is that real? It's hard to prove. But again, the survival of the story isn't about proof, it's about warning. Then there's the infamous crying boy paintings of the 20th century, pre-prints of a solemn child. By the 1980s, firefighters across the UK whispered that whenever a house burned down, the crying boy was found intact among the ashes. Rumors spread that the paintings themselves were cursed, causing the fires. News tabloids fanned the flames, literally, with headlines of blazing curse of the crying boy. Rational explanations surfaced. The prints were coated in fire-retardant varnish. But who remembers varnish when the legend burns brighter? And of course the Dybbuk Box, a wine cabinet auctioned on eBay in the early 2000s. It's advertised as containing a restless spirit. Buyers reported nightmares, illnesses, and a string of misfortunes. Hollywood adapted it into the possession. Even skeptics who dismissed it as hype noted the consistency. One owner after another swore something followed them home. These stories are everywhere, tucked into folklore across continents. The cursed phone number in Bulgaria linked to a string of deaths, the chair of death in England, where anyone who sat in it was said to perish within weeks, the Kohinoor. Diamond that protects women but destroys men. All of them share a pattern. Tragedy plus object equals curse. And this is the category Annabelle lives in. A doll once innocent, now framed as one of the deadliest cursed objects in history. But what separates her from a diamond or a painting is this. She doesn't just carry misfortune. In her legend, she acts. She moves, she writes, she chooses. And that makes her feel alive. Do you believe an object can truly be cursed? Or do you think it's always coincidence and human imagination? Comment below, I want to know what side you fall on. There's an argument skeptics make, and it's worth hearing. Cursed objects have no power on their own. What kills people is fear, stress, suggestion. When you believe you are doomed, your body can manifest it. Elevated blood pressure, disrupted sleep, impaired judgment. In that light, Annabelle doesn't need to move. She just needs you to believe she could. But here's the paradox. If enough people believe something, doesn't that belief itself make it real? Maybe not in physics, but in outcome. A driver who taunts a doll speeds home on adrenaline and crashes. Is that coincidence? Or is it the curse delivered not by a demon, but by human frailty under the weight of belief? Even Ed Warren admitted this paradox in interviews. He described Annabelle not as an animated toy, but as a conduit. The real danger, he argued, wasn't the doll itself. It was what entered the room when you acknowledged it. Call it a demon, call it negative energy, call it your own subconscious. Either way, it's activated the moment you believe. And maybe that's why the rumors after Rivera's death spread so fast. People weren't just processing grief, they were processing fear. If Rivera, a man who respected Annabelle's danger, wasn't safe, who his skeptics say? Rivera's death was tragic, but natural. Heart attacks happen suddenly, even to people in their 40s. Annabelle was never missing. The rest is hysteria. Believers say. Look at the timing. Look at the string of incidents stretching back to the 1970s. Rivera's death is not coincidence. It's pattern, and patterns mean presence. Between them sits the space we occupy tonight. Uncertainty. Skeptics demand paperwork. Believers point to scars. Neither side can silence the other. And that friction, that unresolved tension, is why stories like Annabelle endure. If she were provably fake, she'd be forgotten. If she were provably deadly, she'd be locked in a vault and never spoken of again. But she is just possible enough, and that's the most powerful position a legend can occupy. So where do you fall? Are you a skeptic or a believer? It's important to say this again. Dan Rivera was more than a headline. Friends in the paranormal field described him as compassionate, grounded, and deeply respectful of the stories he carried. His death left a hole not just in a tour schedule, but in a community. And his family, friends, and colleagues deserve to be remembered without reduction. But that's the cruel bargain of folklore. The moment his death intersected with Annabelle's orbit, it became two stories at once. The human story of a man who died too soon, and the folkloric story of a cursed doll who claimed another victim. And both stories exist tangled together, no matter how much we wish we could separate them. So what's the lesson? If you strip away the rumor mill, the clickbait, the exaggerations, what's left? The lesson is that stories matter, belief matters. The things we fear shape the way we live, and sometimes the way we die. Annabelle might be fabric and stuffing, but as long as millions believe she is more, she will always be more. That's what makes her dangerous. That's what makes her legendary. Annabelle sits silently behind glass tonight, motionless, stitched smile, unchanging. To some, she is only fabric and yarn. To others, she is an eternal reminder that evil does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it waits. But the question that lingers is not whether she is truly cursed. The question is this: why do we believe she is? Think about it. Across cultures, across centuries, humans have told the same kinds of stories. Objects that bring ruin. Items that attract darkness. From Japanese Netsuke figures said to house spirits, to African talismans that curse whoever steals them, to medieval relics that promise salvation or destruction depending on who possessed them. We've always needed vessels for our fears. Maybe Annabelle is simply the modern vessel. A Raggedy Ann doll that became a canvas for everything we dread but can't explain. The idea that evil might not hide in shadows, but in the ordinary. That the monster might not knock at your door. It might already be sitting in your living room. And that is why Annabelle endures. Dan Rivera's passing forced the world to look at that case again. Literally and figuratively. For some, it was proof of the curse. For others, it was a sad coincidence wrapped in hysteria. But whether you fall on the skeptic's side or the believer's side, we can agree on this. The legend did not weaken in 2025. It grew stronger. Every share, every TikTok, every whispered retelling breathed new life into Annabelle. That's what folklore does. It evolves. It doesn't need truth. It only needs people willing to pass it on. And pass it on we did. So when you hear the name Annabelle, ask yourself, do you hear the story of a demon? Or do you hear the story of us clinging to the oldest human tradition we have? Telling tales that make the dark a little darker, the silence a little louder, and the night a little longer. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Annabelle truly holds something sinister inside her seams? Or is she only as powerful as the stories we wrap her in? If you've ever owned something you swore was unlucky, cursed, or haunted, share it in the comments. I'm not talking just museum pieces. I mean your grandmother's mirror. The second-hand ring you stopped wearing, the toy that always seemed to move when no one was looking. These stories, your stories, keep folklore alive. And in this community, we treat them with the respect they deserve. And if you'd like me to cover another cursed object, the crying boy paintings, the Bassano vase, the Dybbuk box, tell me which one calls to you, because trust me, Annabelle is only the beginning. Somewhere in Connecticut tonight, a glass case reflects the faint glow of a security light. Behind it, a rag doll stares at nothing. Or maybe at everything. Some will say she is harmless. Some will say she is lethal. But the truth is, she doesn't need to lift a finger. She doesn't need to move at all, because you moved, carried her with you into this moment, into your room, into your thoughts. And when the lights go out tonight, when the silence stretches long, you may find yourself wondering, what if she isn't just a story? So now I leave the question with you. Is Annabelle proof that evil can live in objects? Or is she proof that the human mind is the most haunted place of all? Drop your theory in the comments, I'll be looking for them. If this story made you question the shadows in your own room, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who says they don't scare easily. Let's test that theory together. And if you want me to cover another haunted object, cursed legend, or unsolved disappearance, say the word. Your suggestions guide the future of truth that haunts. This channel isn't just mine, it's ours. And together, we'll keep pulling back the veil, one terrifying story at a time. Until next time, keep your lights on. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes, the truth haunts.